Check, check, mic check. Check, check, mic check. Welcome to Podcast Envy. I'm your podcast boss, Andrea Klunder. Today we are talking about a topic that is near and dear to my heart. Actually, no, it's not. It's not my favorite topic. And that is why I have enlisted help. Today's topic, social media and podcasting. Oh, I have brought the fabulous Lauren Ramsey onto the show. Lauren Ramsey is the founder of Betsy Bash, our favorite social media agency based right here in Chicago, where the Creative Imposter Studios is based. What I do want to say for sure is that it's summer. Well, if you're in the same hemisphere, the same part of the world, it is summer. And that means a few things. It means, for a lot of us, the summer slowdown in our businesses. Where did all the clients go? Where did all the work go? What is happening? And it means all I want to do personally is go to my gym where they have a rooftop pool and get in the rooftop pool and then lay in a deck chair and soak in the sun with sunscreen, of course. And so there is this push-pull between the summer slowdown in business that often happens and the desire to not be super productive and working 5 days a week. I mean, this is why we have summer Fridays, right? Where like Fridays are off or every other Friday is off. When you're self-employed, sometimes it's easy to feel like you're working all the time and there's a million things you should be doing. And like, oh, business is slower. There's fewer client demands. And so I should really be doing the business development right now. All I want to do is hang out by the pool. If you can relate to these two scenarios, the summer slowdown in business and a feeling of not wanting to work as hard, then we're totally on the same page here. And actually, this is perfect timing to do a little bit of business development, messaging development, brand development that doesn't feel hard, that doesn't feel like a ton of work, something that feels fun and engaging. And that is, how are we going to set ourselves up for success when things pick up again in the fall? Or even thinking ahead to how we're going to do things differently in the new year. This means assessing some of the things that we're creating and some of the things that we're doing and asking the question of how could we do this better or more efficiently, or how could we have more fun with this? How could we make this more compelling, more effective? What can we try next? And this ties directly into your social media and podcasting strategy. This year, Lauren Ramsey of Betsy Bash and I decided to team up for you to help you with this conundrum of feeling like you are constantly on the content hamster wheel, generating podcast episodes, generating social media posts, making TikToks and Reels, trying to figure out what the heck to put on YouTube, trying to figure out what the algorithms want. And you have these silos of content that are not all integrated, and you're working hard at trying to fill all of these silos. And then on top of that, a lot of the times it feels like you're not really sure whether it's working or doing anything. And on top of that, you're not a social media company. You're not a media company. You're supposed to be doing all this other work, which is the actual work of the thing that you're supposed to be doing. And this feels like a distraction, and you're not really sure how it's supporting the work. So what we wanted to do was team up to bring my brain and her brain together about podcasting content and social media strategy and figure out how we could streamline this process for you so that you're not spending as much time and energy and frustration on trying to figure out who, what, when, where, why, what on earth are we doing on any of these platforms. And when I think about social media, when I really think about it, I realize that it's two things, right? It is social and it is media. And I, as a podcast producer, as a narrative storyteller, I am great at the media part. Like, media is my thing. I love to create media. That's my zone of excellence. It's my wheelhouse. The social part, I'm not as great at. But that is where the social media expertise comes in, because Lauren is able to take a look at the engagements that you are getting on your social media platforms, the ways in which you are interacting with your people there. one of the frustrating things that a lot of my clients and colleagues have found about podcasting is that sometimes podcasting feels very one directional. It feels like I am creating this content, I am recording this thing, and then I am sending it to you, and then I hear crickets. I don't know if you're listening to it. I don't know how much you're listening to. I don't know what you like. I don't know if it's interesting. I don't know if you're referring it to anybody. I don't get feedback. I don't know who's listening. I see those numbers in my stats, but I don't know anything about those people. And since I don't hear from them, I don't even know if they're real or are they bots. In the social media world, sometimes we get so focused on content, on media, on what to post, how often to post, when to post it, that we forget that there's this whole social engagement piece that is maybe even more important than the content that you're posting. So Lauren and I thought, well, why don't we join forces so that you don't have to worry about what to post? Your podcast is generating so much incredible content that you can have content for days, weeks, months, years based on your podcast. And then we can also look at what is and isn't working. Where is your engagement coming from? Where is it getting stuck? And then that can help you with the social piece, with the engagement, with the dialogue, with the conversation. So it's not just posting media, posting media, posting media. Is it working? And this starts to make the whole environment, the whole ecosystem that you're creating for your brand online, something that your audience can just pour themselves into in whatever way they happen to be consuming content and interacting in the online space in that moment. It gives them a way to respond. It gives them a way to interact, whether or not they actually ever listen to your whole long form podcast. Weird, right? And if they are listening to your whole long form podcast, this gives them another way to stay engaged in between episodes, in between seasons. It reminds them that the show is coming. It keeps them connected. It keeps feeding that relationship and making it stronger and stronger and stronger. And a lot of times what I see is because organizations and companies have two different departments or two different people or two different sets of agencies that are creating content and coming up with strategies separately for their podcast and separately for their social media and then separately for whatever other marketing that they're doing. When all of these things are separate, they're not efficient. They're not as effective. They're not working together. It's so frustrating for me to see an organization that I know has a great podcast full of very rich content, and then they post something on social about the same thing that they have on their podcast, but then they never tie it back to the podcast. So the person who's seeing the social post and is interested in that, they don't have a way to go deeper. They don't have an easy way to see, ooh, this is interesting. I want to learn more, to bookmark it, to come back to later, to know that there's a more for them to have. And then likewise, in podcast content, there's no engagement back to social media. Most of the time, what I hear is, oh yeah, at the end of this episode, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and here's the handle. And it's like, well, here's all the platforms, follow us there. But yeah, why? Why am I going there? What more is happening? What more conversation is happening? How more can I engage with you? Are you live streaming? Are you talking about the episode? Are you starting a conversation? Are you asking questions? Do you have a LinkedIn newsletter? How is it that you want me to engage with you? Make it easy. Make it easy for me to interact. I'm your podcast listener. I'm your fan. I'm giving you a lot of time and attention. You don't know that because you haven't made it easy for me to do that. I'm your social media follower. I love what you post. I constantly see your posts in my feed and I find it very entertaining, but I want more. I want to feel more of a connection to you. Make it easy for me to come listen to your podcast. And when this relationship can be more symbiotic, then you're going to see results. It's inevitable. I think the primary reason why brands especially are not seeing results with their podcast is because it's this separate thing over here that's not fully integrated in the rest of their communication strategy. And the reason why brands are frustrated that their social media efforts are not working to drive listeners to their podcast is because it's not integrated. It's just a flat, one-dimensional thing. Here's a post with our new episode. Here's an audiogram with our new episode. Here's the audio of our episode on YouTube, which I do say you should do that, but it's not the whole thing. It's not the whole enchilada. And I'm getting hungry for Mexican food right now. I wish I didn't say that. So, this is the thing. We wanted to make social media and podcasting even more effective, enjoyable, integrated, efficient, all those words that start with an E or an I. And now I'm thinking of Old MacDonald, how to farm E-I-E-I-O. I need something that starts with O. More optimized. There we go. We've got some E words, efficient, effective, enjoyable, I words, integrated, and O words optimized. How's that for some marketing and business buzzwords for you? So, this service that Lauren and I created this year is called the Creative Bash. We are going to dig into your socials. We're going to dig into your show. We're going to dig into your brand. And we're going to ask you a ton of questions. Then we're going to see if what you say in your questions is what we find online and where the opportunities are for you to do this even better. This is going to save you so much time. This is going to save you consulting budget money. This is going to save you frustration. And this is going to save you from disappointment, which, if you're anything like me, saving you from disappointment is a high ticket offer, right? Please save me from disappointment. So that's the Creative Bash. And there will be a link for you to drop some information into a Google form for us. And then we will reach out to you to schedule a complimentary call with us if we think that we can help you. We'll reach out to you either way, but we'll have the complimentary call if we think that we can help you. So there's no risk. It just takes a few minutes to give us the information that we need to see if it's a good fit, a match made in Creative Bash heaven. The reason why it's called the Creative Bash, side note, remember what I was saying about media and social and how I'm really strong in media and Lauren's really good in social engagement. This is where that name Creative Bash comes from. So it's the creative imposter, the media creation side, and then it's the Betsy Bash, which is the social side, the party, the bash. It's an invitation to join us at the bash and to be creative about the way that you show up. That's what it is. I just made that up. It's an invitation to be social at the bash and be creative about the way you show up. New tagline. Lauren, I hope you like it because we're going to use it. All right. What you are going to hear in the rest of the episode is 5 tips from Lauren about your social media strategy as relates to your podcast. This show is about crafting compelling audio first messaging and storytelling that helps to illuminate your brand story and to connect in a deep way with your audience in a way that allows them to feel a genuine, intimate affinity with your brand. It's also about the entire media and content ecosystem of how and where you are telling your brand story, how and where you are connecting with your people, with your audience. And that is not limited to your podcast. So yes, I am a podcaster. I am a podcast producer. I am a huge fan of podcasting long form, audio first media in order to do all of those things we just talked about. But I recognize that in this current day and age, in this current century, in this current world in which we exist, there are so many different ways that our ideal communities, our ideal audience members, our ideal people who are part of what it is that we are up to in the work of our business, our company, or our organization come into contact with our brand, come into contact with things that we've created, messaging that has been put out in the world, and with things that other people, other entities, other companies are saying about our brand, our company, our organization. And nowhere is that happening more than right here on social media. This episode is not an interview. This episode is a collection of 5 of the top questions or concerns that I get from our podcasting clients about integrating their show into their social media strategy. They're short, quick tips. And then if you're like, all of this sounds really cool, like I would like some more strategies, I would like to learn more, the podcast angel for this episode is the Creative Bash and the Social Media Influencer Masterclass. Podcast angels are those products, services, events, and resources that I think will really help you to have a better experience podcasting. Of course, we want you to connect with us for the Creative Bash. That's the number one top thing that we want you to do. However, if that is not in your budget at this moment, or if that's not something that you can commit to time-wise because you've got a rooftop pool to go hang out at all summer, or a camping in the woods excursion that's going to be for the next 30 days, I'm not judging you at all because that's where I want to be. So if that's the case, I have excellent news for you, and I kind of buried the lead here a little bit on this. Lauren and I are offering a Podcast Envy virtual masterclass on Zoom, how to grow your podcast like a social media influencer. Thursday, June 29th, 2023 at 11 a.m. Central. It's 1 hour long. It's about 45 minutes of content plus 15 minutes of interactive Q&A. This is a framework that will help you to make your social media decisions around your show and shift your thinking so that you can do this more effectively and more enjoyably on your own, and you don't feel like you're on that constant hamster wheel wondering why nothing feels like it's working. When you sign up for this class, you'll be able to attend live on Thursday, June 29th and participate in the interactive Q&A session. If you want to be part of this class, but you can't join live at that time, you can get the replay later. And the great news is that you can even submit your top questions to us ahead of time so that we can be sure to answer them during that Q&A. Podcast Envy Masterclasses are valued at $99. Hot tip, you can get 50% off when you use the promo code VIPinvite. The easiest way to find it is to go to thecreativeimposter.com/masterclasses, thecreativeimposter.com/masterclasses. That'll take you to the Eventbrite page. You'll see the class with me and Lauren, and then when you go to checkout, you want to enter the promo code VIPinvite to get 50% off your ticket. Send us your questions ahead of time. We'll be sure to answer them during the Q&A, or show up live and hang out with us, and then we can have a conversation specifically about your show. So all of these links and resources will be in the show notes, in the episode description in your app, and of course at podcastenvy.com. All right, that is what we are up to. And I am super excited to share with you 5 social media tips for your podcast from Lauren Ramsey right now. Lauren Ramsey from Betsy Bash. How's it going?
It's going good.
Number one thing I hear from podcasters when they're thinking about, talking about, commiserating about social media and their show is, I keep making all these audiograms and quote graphics, and every time I post a new episode, I always share it on all the social media platforms, and I feel like my audience isn't growing, nothing's happening, nobody's clicking, I'm not getting any new listeners from social media. Am I just wasting my time posting my episodes on social? What am I doing wrong?
I love this question. And I think this is an issue that everyone deals with social media. There's some preconceived notions that if I post it, they will come, right? And it's not exactly true anymore, especially when it comes to Instagram and Facebook. These algorithms on these social media platforms are very robust, and you are competing with a lot of people. So if you don't have an ad strategy, that's a big portion of why people aren't seeing your posts and reacting to what you're asking them to react to. The second component might be, are you thinking about it from your audience's perspective? Are you pulling the right quotes that speak to why the audience is listening to your show to begin with? I always say, lovingly, people are selfish. They want to know what's in it for them. If your social media is not targeting their exact interests and desires and problems they're trying to solve, that might be why you're losing them.
So what do you do?
First component is like reviewing the content, and thinking about it like, does this help me or does it help the audience? If it's only helping you, re-strategize. Try to think about it from your audience's perspective and maybe even ask them, send out a survey if you've got an email list and say, would you rather see more quotes or more audiograms? Would you rather see more content about this or that? And then you're getting that direct feedback. Alternatively, you could talk directly to your most engaged followers that you know listen every week or every month and ask them directly, like, what has been the most beneficial thing for you about my podcast? What do you love the most? And then start creating content around those topics. And always, always, always ad spend on Instagram and Facebook. Now, if you're doing TikTok, that's a little different because TikTok is a brand new algorithm, relatively speaking. Brands and podcasts aren't necessarily taking over TikTok in the way that they're already all over Instagram and all over Facebook. So when you enter into TikTok, you have less people to compete with. And because TikTok has to compete with Instagram, TikTok is offering you benefits in their algorithm. So for instance, let's say you have a podcast about cold brew. If you post a TikTok every day, every other day, every week about something about cold brew, and let's just make it even more niche down to Chicago. Eventually, TikTok, and it happens pretty quickly, is going to start sending people your way that like cold brew and live in Chicago. That doesn't happen on Instagram. Without ad spend, it doesn't happen. So on TikTok, you have this ability to pull people towards you just by posting content regularly and about the same topic, which is a real huge advantage.
How can I use the content that I'm already recording for my podcast on social media? Are audiograms the only thing I can do?
Oh, definitely not. So one thing that I think would be really fun and people really like to engage with is what I call swipe collages. So it's uploading multiple images into Instagram and making them connect to each other. Let's say you have a podcast and you have 3 tips about the topic in your podcast today. So you could make a 4-image swipe collage where the first image talks about what you're going to give tips on and tells them to swipe. And then the next 3 are the 3 tips. Another really fun thing that you could do is you could strip the audio and upload it into Instagram and then record a video of you doing what you're talking about, planning what you're talking about, some sort of video that goes along with the audio. Or if you don't want to be on camera, which I understand, you could also shoot like some kind of B-roll type footage that also talks to the topic. Let's say you have a podcast about cold brew. You could either shoot video of you drinking cold brew and loving it, or you could shoot like a lot of different coffee shops and take yourself out of it, but still give people something to look at while they listen to your audio. Or let's say you have a podcast about the great outdoors, right? And like being a woman, getting out into nature and being active and being proud of it no matter where you are in your journey. So you strip some audio from your podcast, you can upload that into Reels, and then you could either record video of you hiking, right? Or you could just record video of nature and of the things that you're seeing on your hike. The idea is you want to have video that matches the audio, but it doesn't necessarily have to feature you. Another fun way, if you are okay being on camera, is you can kind of re-talk about what you talked about on your podcast, right? So let's say you have one concept you really want to break down for people. You can listen to your podcast, then just say that same thing exactly again, either in a reel or on a TikTok, explaining to people what that concept is.
It sounds like making this stuff is like a lot of extra work. How long should these videos be?
Well, that's the fun part. They don't have to be long. People lose interest after 2 seconds. So really, you only have 2 seconds to catch them. So the shorter the video, the better. With anything where you're trying to capture people's attention in video, you want to put the hook first, right? Why should they listen to you? Do you struggle with going out into nature by yourself? Do you struggle with feeling fit enough to go on a hike? Give people a reason to listen and address their problem right away, and then they'll listen to the rest. But if you just start talking and they don't know where you're going, they're going to move on.
Hey, Lauren from Betsy Bash.
Hello.
Something that you offer in your social media services is called social selling. And when I first heard of this, I was like, what is that? Spamming people on LinkedIn? Tell me more.
Yes, definitely. So it started with community management as like a broad term. You've got all these people in your community, right? They're either following you or you're following them or you're engaging with each other. Then you want to start engaging with that community one-on-one, not just posting, right? And this is a very, very fundamental social media principle, is it cannot only be one way. If you're doing that, you're doing it wrong, because it's not a soapbox. It's not a place for you to just shout into the void. It's a place for you to share and receive back. So you want to be engaging with people one-to-one, either in comments or in DMs or in stories, depending on the platform. But it doesn't have to be spammy and it doesn't have to be inauthentic, right? So let's say you have a podcast about crafting. There's tons of people on Instagram, tons of people on TikTok talking about crafting. So you could list out a bunch of hashtags that you think your audience would be searching and posting content with that hashtag. And then you go into Instagram or you go into TikTok and you start pulling up those hashtags, looking through the posts that are inside those hashtags and making conversations, right? Authentic conversations. So if you see somebody crafting with a cricket and you're like, oh my gosh, I love crickets. I've had mine for this many long years and I make so many things. Like, what's your favorite thing to make with yours? So you're not just saying, hey, listen to my podcast. It looks like you like to craft.
No.
Don't do that. So social selling has its roots in community management, but social selling does take it a little bit further because it has that selling component. So what you want to do is build and nurture a relationship through community management until you can do the next step, which is, I don't know if you're into podcasts, but I have a crafting podcast and I was actually talking about that same exact thing last week and I'd love to hear what you think, right? That seems authentic after you've built the relationship. But just jumping right in and saying, hey, do this for me, that's not going to work.
Hey, Lauren from Betsy Bash.
Hello, hello.
I love doing interviews for my podcast, and I get some guests on who have really big audiences, but I feel like they don't always automatically share their episodes. What am I doing wrong? How can I get my guests to share their interviews on my show with their audience?
This is a huge one for anybody that's trying to promote anything, right? You want to get as many people to see or listen to your podcast as possible. So what you want to do is make it as easy as possible for your guest to do what you're asking them to do. So what I recommend is creating everything for them, right? So whatever you're going to promote, just give them those graphics and then also write the copy for them. So maybe as you're writing the copy for your social media posts, you can alter them a little bit from I interviewed so-and-so today to I was on so-and-so's podcast today, right? And that way, all they have to do really is copy, paste, upload an image. The other piece of that that's really important is following up. Right? People have the best intentions. They're going to do it at the end of the day. They're going to do it when they have a second between meetings and then they forget. So don't just ask once, ask a couple times and also set the expectation from the beginning. Say when we have guests on our show, we really love for them to also share the interview and really start to build this community around the podcast, the episode, and the topic. Is that something you're willing to do? And then you already have their buy-in from the beginning.
What about tagging my guests?
You should definitely do that. Yeah, absolutely. So on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok, you can tag people. And the great thing about that is if they respond to it, like let's say Facebook, for example, if you have a post, you tag them, they respond to it, that post is now going to be seen by their audience. And so it just continues to build. The more engagement that you get, the more people that see the post.
And I'm going to throw in a bonus tip, which is make sure that the episode sounds as good as possible so that they really want to share it, so that they are highlighted in a really awesome way through the quality of the audio and through the quality of the interaction and the conversation that you had with them. So making sure that it's content they actually want to share with their audience will go a long way.
100%.
All right, this question is not a question. It's an exclamation. I'm so overwhelmed with everything that we have to do to put together a podcast. By the time the episode is released, the last thing I want to do is figure out how to do my social media marketing. And I know everyone says, be everywhere, be on all the platforms, share it everywhere, shout it from the rooftops. How on earth do I make this whole thing more sustainable?
It is overwhelming because it's a lot of content. Even as creatives, this is what we do all day long. Like sometimes we're like, need a break, So I totally get where you're coming from when you feel like you're overwhelmed with too much content to create. What I will say is it's important to do, right? Because you do want to build that community around your podcast and continue to pull people towards you and continue to build that bigger community through active social media management. Now, what I would just say is first look at your analytics. So one thing that we often see with our clients is that their Facebook audience is vastly different than their Instagram audience. And that would be the same thing if you added in TikTok, right? The generations are different, the buying behaviors are different, the demographics are different, so they should be treated differently, right? So if you're putting out the same content on all the platforms, but your audiences aren't the same, that might be why you're feeling overwhelmed because you're not going to get the results that you want if the audience and the content don't match. So if you're looking at your stats and you see that Facebook has really never done much for you, let's say you get a few likes, you get a few follows, but you don't have a lot of engagement, you don't have a lot of new followers, And let's just, for example's sake, say you're not running ads. But then you look at Instagram and you see that, wow, this platform has really been gaining followers. It's been slow, but we've been gaining followers over the past 12 months. I can see that this demographic is engaging with most of my posts. So from those two, if you're overwhelmed and you don't have any other help that you can lean on, focus on Instagram, right? Just go where your people are first and build that audience because they're already there to help you get started. And then, of course, the other obvious answer is to work with us.
I was just going to say, when you say look at your analytics to see what is and isn't working for you, I have no idea.
You're like,
what?
I'm already out. I don't know.
I already know. I don't know.
Yeah. And sometimes that can be a gut check, right? You might already know that your Instagram is more popular because maybe people mention that a lot. Like, oh, I saw your podcast on Instagram. Or maybe you get a lot of responses to your stories or something like that. But what you probably don't know is the demographics, right? And that continues to shock our clients where we'll say, look, your Facebook audience skews towards the boomer demographic. Your Instagram audience skews towards the millennial demographic. Both of those generations are vastly different from each other. They want to be marketed to differently. So if you're ignoring that demographic data, you're kind of setting yourself up for disappointment because you're putting work towards something that's not going to resonate.
And that's where the creative bash comes in.
Yes, exactly. So we can really help you go into those analytics, do all the crazy work that you don't want to do, that we love to do. We were just talking today about how much we love numbers. But, we'll look through all your data on the back end. We'll get into your systems and see what's going on and really give you a strategy that's manageable and that is beneficial for what your goals are. I describe it as a deep dive into your analytics to pull out the best strategy for what you're trying to do with your podcast.
So one thing I see, especially with larger companies and organizations, is that they often have teams building strategies in little buckets. You have your email communication, you have your PR team, you have your social media team, and you have your podcast team. And they're not always all on the same page.
Oh my gosh, it's a huge problem for sure. Because for one thing, your audience is seeing all of those channels. So if they don't match, if they're not aligned, people can feel that. Whether or not they realize it consciously, they are realizing it subconsciously, and it negatively impacts their perception of your brand subconsciously, which is really hard to get rid of later, right? How do you change someone's subconscious? Yeah, it's beyond my pay grade, that's for sure.
Same.
But really, your social media is there to pull people towards your brand. It's there to create a community around your brand. So if it's not aligned with what your podcast marketing goals are, that's a huge miss because that's a perfect place to tell your community about your podcast.
And also, it just seems like you're spinning your wheels and burning a lot of time, energy, and resources, maybe doing the same processes and decision-making over and over again with multiple teams.
Oh, 100%. I mean, everyone's going to ask you brand guide, style guide, goals, audience. So if you have to answer those questions multiple times, or if you started the process with one person and made some changes, but then gave an old document to the next person, it just opens you up for mistakes, for things taking longer than they should. And ultimately, your strategies won't be aligned and your audience will feel that.
So when you sign up for the Creative Bash, you get Lauren and me at the same time.
Yes.
We're both there on the call, so we don't have to ask you the questions twice. And behind the scenes, we're in constant communication with each other as we build out your custom strategy so that you don't have to do any of that negotiation work. You don't have to send documents here, there, and everywhere. We're on the same page so that everything is aligned and you're streamlining all of your processes and all of your content.
The other thing that I really love about our work together is that we make each other's ideas better. Right? You can give me a podcast idea and I can be like, ooh, this is exactly how you should promote that on social. And I can say, what would be a good topic for a reel? And you can say, oh, I've got 3 ideas right now. Whereas if you have 2 separate teams, you're having those conversations over and over again, and you miss out on those opportunities where they're collaborating and brainstorming off the same idea.
So the first part of the intensive is a short intake form.
I ask you a bunch of questions. Trying to get to know a little bit more about your brand, your podcast, your audience, current social strategy, all those fun questions.
One of my favorite questions that the first time I ever saw it, I was like, why are you asking this? Was, if your brand was a vacation destination, where would it be? And I was like, what?
I have a lot of wacky questions like that. The reason I ask those things is because it really gets people to think creatively on a different level. They've probably never been asked that question before. Another one we ask is if your brand had a celebrity ambassador, who would it be? right? And that answer, as well as the previous one, tells me a lot about what you think about your brand, how you want to relate to your audience, who you look up to, what's important to you. And so a lot of that can be answered in just one question.
And that's why we call it the Creative Bash, because strategy doesn't have to be boring.
Exactly.
Part 2 is that we all get on a call together and do what?
Definitely go through all those questions. And I'm going to ask you again if you didn't answer them.
And we get even deeper into those questions and see what new questions arise. And I would say by the end of that first intensive call, you're already walking away with so many new insights about your brand and your show, and you are going to be full of creative ideas before we've even presented the strategy.
Yes, exactly. A lot of people say like, oh, I never thought about that before, or, oh, that's a really good question. And so it starts your creative process as well. And then what happens next is we're going to start working on that secret sauce that that is why you signed up for the Creative Bash in the first place. Andrea and I are going to work together. We're going to brainstorm ideas together. We're going to bounce ideas off each other, make the ideas even better. And then
the strategy reveal.
Woo, 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 our favorite part. And then all the creative ideas are going to crystallize into an easy to implement strategy.
And then you get to take that strategy with you and go forth and be prosperous.
Yes. Crush the podcast world.
What happens if I'm like, this is awesome. I would love to do all of the things that you suggested. I would love to be doing the social selling. I would love to be posting more content for my podcast. I would love to be engaging more with other people in my community. And again, I'm so overwhelmed. How am I possibly going to do all of this?
Oh, well, we're here to help. I mean, we can definitely help you implement the strategy, right? So if you look at what we've done and you think, there's no way I can do this on my own, maybe one day, but right now, there's no way I can do this on my own, then we would love to help you.
Okay, break it down for me. I know that when I first heard of social media management, I assumed that you were basically just scheduling all the posts and all the content that I made on all the platforms. And I didn't really know, like, is that it? Is that what social media management is? Tell me more.
So social media management really involves strategy, right? And aligning your posts with your audience, with your goals. And so there's a higher level of expertise that comes along with social media management than, let's say, hiring a freelancer to schedule your posts, right? That freelancer is going to do what you ask them to do. They may or may not be suggesting the best thing for you to do or know the best thing for you to do. So when you sign up with us to do social media management, we're looking at it from all those different angles, and we're making sure that each piece of content is doing what it should be doing.
And what's so great about that is we all know once you start with a strategy, things are always going to change and morph and develop, and you're going to learn as you go. And so when you continue the Creative Bash as a retainer service, we're going to be able to help you make those nuanced tweaks to your strategy to keep it working better and better for you as you go.
Absolutely. And we've all seen what's happened in the past year or so with Reels and TikToks. I mean, nobody talked about Reels 2 years ago, right? So who's to say that something won't happen? 3 months after we deliver your strategy, maybe there's a brand new platform that's around. And then you might have all these questions about, does this strategy work on that platform? And it may or may not. So we would love to be right there with you every step of the way to make sure that your strategy is on point. So what I always love to tell our clients is you do what you're great at, right? Let us do what we're great at. We are great at social media. We're great at promoting your business. We're great at promoting your podcast. And we would love to do that for you and take all of this work off your plate. One thing that has been true about social media since it began is that it changes. So we love keeping up with all the changes. But if you don't, I think the Creative Bash would be great for you.
All right. So if you loved these tips and you can't wait to get more, be sure to sign up for the Podcast Envy Masterclass Thursday, June 29th at 11 a.m. Central. Use the promo code VIP invite to get 50% off. And click the link in the show notes to sign up for a free consultation about the Creative Bash so that we can help get your podcast and social strategy in sync. Podcast Envy is produced by your podcast boss, Andrea Klunder. That's me.
The podcast Envy theme music is by Valentin Sosnitsky, courtesy of the Free Sound Project at freesound.org, and our podcast Angel music is by Benjamin Mastropolito, also on freesound.org as Lemon Cream. All music is licensed under the Creative Commons. Our episodes are mixed by Edwin Ruiz, and hey, if you want your show to sound as good as ours, hire us. Put the magic audio mojo of the Creative Imposter Studios to work for you. Thanks so much for listening, and here's to making your podcast the envy of everyone else.